What's up, everyone? This is Zach with Top Deck Nation coming at you today with another deck profile video. If you haven't watched our last video, be sure to check it out. We went over the winning decks from US and Japanese nationals. But today we're going to do something a little bit different. So normally when I do deck profile videos, they're either on PTCGO, and they're usually decks that are going to be pretty established decks. You know, they might be winning decks or, nonetheless, they're going to be decks that are actually in the format right now. But today I'm going to do something just a little bit different. As you can see, I'm going to be taking a look at Volcanion-EX, which is coming from the upcoming Steam Siege set that's going to come out next month. And normally I don't really do that, but I think it's pretty relevant just because, one, it's going to come out pretty soon, but more importantly, it will be out in time for the World Championships. Now, they have changed the ruling on that, I believe, so that the newest set will be legal the third Friday after its release. So basically 2 to 2.5 weeks, which in this case basically means that the newest Steam Siege set will in fact be legal for World Championships. So I thought it would be pretty relevant to make this deck. And I've had a lot of fun with it. I hope you guys enjoy it, but it's a great deck, really consistent. It is a shame that some of these cards are going to be rotating, but I guess that's how it is. Hopefully we'll get it reprinted in the next few months, but you'll never know. And yeah, let's go ahead and jump into it. So before we actually kind of go over the cards, I will say I apologize that it's just kind of a picture of the list. Since it's not on PTCGO, I'm working on a fix to hopefully get a tripod for my phone. I tried using my camcorder, but for some reason, the angling just wouldn't work out, so I couldn't get the cards at just the right angle to make it close enough to see the list. So I do apologize about that, but let's go ahead and jump into it. So the main attacker here, of course, is going to be Volcanion-EX. It has that Steam Up ability, which basically says that you can discard a fire energy from your hand, and then your basic fire Pokemon's attacks do 30 more damage. So if you're familiar with Deoxys-EX's Power Connect from Plasma Freeze, I think, you'll be pretty familiar with what this does. Deoxys, it added 10 more damage from the bench for each Deoxys you had in play, and it applied to only Plasma Pokemon. So there are some parallels here, but Volcanion, in my opinion, is a lot more busted, I guess, really powerful, because this thing will stack, meaning that if I have 4 Volcanion and I discard 4 energy from my hand, my basic fire Pokemon's attacks are going to do a whopping 120 more damage. So in the case of Volcanion-EX, he's already doing 130. So essentially he's doing 250. So enough to knock out a Wailord-EX with a 3 energy attack. That is ridiculous. But yeah, he does have this volcanic heat attack. It does 130, and it says he cannot attack during your next turn. We will be able to circumvent this, kind of get around it, and I'll explain how in just a little bit. But as you can see, it's a really strong card. Basically, if I discard 2 fire energies, I can do 190, and suddenly I can knock out pretty much any of your Pokemon EX. Or better yet, I can put a Fighting Fury belt on Volcanion, and suddenly with 1 discard of that fire energy, I'm doing 170, which again is enough to knock out most Pokemon EX. So that is why it's so good. It's a fire type. It's also a water type, which basically means that in the mirror match, maybe you can, knock out the Volcanions with a Volcanion. I mean, it seems like it's a great card. I'm not really sure what else is weak to water types, but nonetheless, it's pretty cool that it does have dual typing here, and that's going to be the theme around this upcoming Steam Siege set. So, and yeah, that's basically going to be Volcanion. We're going to move on here. So we play 3 of the baby Volcanion. Now, the attacks aren't exactly translated, but or the attack names, I should say, but the first attack, it does 20 damage for 1 fire, so not bad. But more importantly, it kind of reminds me of Virizion-EX here. It's got this attack where I choose 2 of my bench Pokemon, and then I get a fire energy from the discard and attach it to each of them. So that's pretty interesting. That's really, really good, especially in a deck that, can burn through your resources, put fire energy in the discard really, really quickly. So I really like that. And, it's got 130 HP, so I can add a Fighting Fury belt, make it 170, make it just as, strong as a Pokemon EX. And then the attack, it's doing 100 damage for 3. Well, with 2 of those fires discarded through Volcanion's ability and a Fighting Fury belt, well, suddenly Volcanion is doing, a ton of damage. He's knocking out most Pokemon EX. So he's really, really strong. And it's awesome that they printed this. I do like it. So, we're also playing 2 Shaymin. Shaymin's pretty standard, good setup. Of course, it has the setup ability. So pretty straightforward there. Tells you what to do. Draw until you have 6. And then we play 1 Hoopa-EX just because since we're playing something where the ability stacks, and we want to get those out as quick as possible, Hoopa is going to let us do that. So my first turn, I can use Scoundrel Ring, I can pull out 2 Volcanion-EX and a Shaymin, and be good to go. So that pretty much wraps up the Pokemon line. The reason I'm playing 4 Volcanion, it might seem kind of overkill because really, you might just use 2 or 3 in a match and you've got the non-EX Volcanion, mainly because, that ability is incredibly strong and I need 4 because, if I went against something like Wailord where I wouldn't really stand a chance, this is actually going to let me pull off turns where I can knock out Wailords or, just whatever it is. It gives me a lot of options and I really like it. I think it's a powerful ability. So I think that really justifies playing 4. As far as supporters go, we're going to play 3 Professor Sycamore. Usually I play 4 in my decks for consistency. I think it's probably the best supporter overall. But I think having Blacksmith in here kind of justifies playing the third, just 3 Professor Sycamore, I should say. Blacksmith makes the deck really self-sufficient. I don't have to necessarily, burn through my deck and draw 7 every single turn when, really I can attach, use a Blacksmith and just, take out a Pokemon EX just like that. So I don't really think it needs 3, more than 3. Again, we are going to play 3 Blacksmith. This is what really makes the deck work. As I mentioned, I believe Blacksmith is going to be rotating September 1st just because it was in Flashfire and the new format is going to be Primal Clash on in the standard. So that's going to be a huge change. I mean, I think last rotation it wasn't that bad. I think it was XY on, but this time, I mean, we're losing so much stuff. I really hope we get that reprint set. I think it's called Championship, Premium Championship 4 in Japan. I'm not sure if we'll get it. So in the case of this, when Blacksmith rotates, players are going to have to rely on things like Max Elixir and Volcanion's attack here to power up Volcanion-EX. But in the meantime, Blacksmith makes it so good. And then we play 2 N. N is just for consistency. Sometimes I don't want to have to discard my entire hand when there's good stuff in it. Like if I have a hand that's unplayable, but I've got like 2 Shaymin in my hand or, 4 or 5 energy or something. If I get a bad hand, I don't necessarily want to like discard all of those resources at one time, especially the first couple turns. And then, of course, late game, it's great to kind of end your opponent down, especially against a deck such as like Night March or something, just to give yourself a fighting chance. Night March is rampant right now, so I think it's pretty justified to play in. I think it's a great card. We're going to play 1 AZ just because it gives us a few outs. First of all, it's a kind of like a retreating card. It's also like a switch card. It's also like a healing card. I mean, it's really like a great utility card overall. There's so many ways to use AZ. Now, it might seem kind of weird having to AZ a Volcanion and get rid of 3 energy, but keep in mind, we do have the non-EX that can basically put those energy back on the same turn. So I think it's really good, and more importantly, we need an out just in case something like Trevenant tries to, Lysandre stall like your Hoopa or maybe a Volcanion with no energy. So it's great to have that option to kind of get that liability off your bench, and that way you can just continue to just be aggressive with that attack. We're gonna play 1 Lysandre because Lysandre is a great supporter. I can bring out stuff, just get cheap knockouts, especially on those Pokemon EXs like Shaymin. It's really easy just to get Volcanion powered up and just, Lysandre, Shaymin, Lysandre, whatever, knock it out before they even get set up. So that's really good. I would play a second in here. It's, like I said, a great card. If it's prized, I mean, that's a pretty big dip in your, overall strategy. But I found that the list is extremely tight here to fit everything in here. So I'm just playing 1 and I think it works, but you might want to consider playing a second. We're going to play 1 Hex Maniac just because, like I said, there's a lot of cards that, or a lot of decks, I should say, that kind of revolve around these abilities. So things like Trevenant, the Forest Cursed item lock ability, Greninja with those giant water shurikens, Bronzong with metal links, there's so many cards that have abilities, and that's why those decks work. So pretty necessary for us to play Hex Maniac, but just keep in mind it will shut off your abilities, which means that you need to make sure that you use your abilities first. So don't use like Volcanion Steam Up after you've played Hex Maniac, obviously. But definitely worth it. I think Hex Maniac is fantastic, especially, when we can always battle compress all of these one-of supporters back in the deck, or back in the discard. So our last supporter is going to be Pokemon Ranger. I'm really excited about this because I think it provides a sense of balance in the standard format, especially. If you're not familiar with it, it basically says remove all effects of attacks on both players and their Pokemon, I think. And the most important part about that is where it says from the players. So things like Seismitoad that use Quaking Punch, they normally item lock the player, but suddenly that can be removed. And it's also going to be removing things like status conditions. So overall, a really, really good card. I like it a lot. It's going to prevent, that item lock and things like that. Just keep in mind it is preventing those or removing the effects of attacks and not abilities. So Trevenant will still get through there, but it's still a really good card to have. Stadium-wise, we're going to be playing 3 Scorched Earth. I think this is probably the most appropriate stadium in here just because we play a ton of fire energy. The whole deck revolves around, using fire energy in some way or another, whether it be drawing or putting it in your discard to power up Volcanion. So really good. I was testing Skyfield in here, but I think, going into the World Championships, which is what this deck is really tailored toward for the most part, Mega Rayquaza is a great deck, and this deck will probably struggle if I just, have a Skyfield left out and then Mega Rayquaza is hitting for who knows how much damage. So I think Scorched Earth provides a great level of consistency. Being able to discard a fire and draw 2 cards and possibly get a Blacksmith off. I mean, that's pretty good. I like that. As far as items go, we're going to be playing 4 Ultra Ball. That's standard. Just to make sure that we are getting our Pokemon out the first turn, not getting knocked out pretty quickly, and just getting set up really quickly as well. 4 Trainer's Mill, just because we play a ton of trainers here, and all of these trainer cards are important. We want to draw into our supporters quickly. We want to win the Stadium War and get that Scorched Earth really quickly. And we play a lot of really relevant items that all kind of work together to get this strategy going. So I think that Trainer's Mill, definitely a 4 of in here. 4 Verse Seeker, pretty standard as well, just because we want to be able to reuse our supporters. It pairs really nicely with Battle Compressor because I can basically go, I'm going to Battle Compressor, say, Hex Maniac, Pokemon Ranger, and Lysandre. Well, suddenly, those 1-of supporters are essentially 4-of supporters because they're in the discard. I've got Verse Seekers in the deck, and there we go. I can reuse them anytime I want, so I do like that. We're going to play 3 Fighting Fury Belt. I like Fighting Fury Belt because it's going to make the math a little harder for decks like Greninja and Trevenant to knock you out. The 10 damage is an added bonus. I like that. And it basically makes these Pokemon even bulkier, even tankier. So, and not to mention, that 10 damage, it does add up in this deck because suddenly I'm doing 140 damage instead of 130, or, 110 damage instead of 100. So it reduces the number of fire energies I have to discard with Volcanion's Steam Up ability. And it's really just kind of making it a little bit easier to hit those magic numbers for the knockouts. We're going to play 2 Float Stone. This is good to put on things like Hoopa or Shaymin, or, even in like a situation where Volcanion gets stuck in the active, or the baby Volcanion gives you a great out just to retreat out. And then if something gets knocked out, you can always promote it and just retreat out if you need to. We're going to be playing 2 Battle Compressor. This is really, really good in here, in my opinion, just because, I can get fire energy in the discard really quickly to get Blacksmith going. I can put 1-of supporters or whatever supporters in the discard just in case I need to, have quick access to them. And then late game, I can get rid of 3 cards and, maximize my chances of getting that 1 card that will win me the game. Maybe the last Lysandre, Verse Seeker, etc. So it's pretty good. I like that. And then, as far as our 1-of cards here, we're going to play a Professor's Letter. I think this is, pretty obvious because we play a bunch of fire energy. The more fire energy I have, the better in my hand. I can draw cards with it. I can, stack up those Steam Up abilities. So it's really good to have. And I can also get it off Trainer's Mill. I'm not really sure how often that'll happen, but it's always good just to have that option there. We're going to play an Energy Retrieval because, like I said, we want to get those fire energies back. Now, another option might be Fisherman, just because it is a supporter and gets you 4 energies, which is really good. But I think Energy Retrieval is a little bit better because I don't have to waste the supporter. You'll find with this deck that you want to be using Blacksmith quite a bit. So I think Energy Retrieval is a good option to get those fires back as quick as you can. We're going to be playing an Escape Rope because, well, I should say I was on the fence between Switch and Escape Rope. I usually prefer Switch, but Escape Rope is good for a couple reasons in here. First of all, if my opponent is trying to stall with a Jolteon-EX, for example, normally Pokemon Ranger can get around that, but say it's prized, Escape Rope is going to let me kind of get around that. It'll send it back to the bench, and then I can Lysandre it back up and knock it out since that effect will be gone. So I do like that. And also because Volcanion's attack, after he uses it, it says that you can't use the attack next turn. So say I play an Escape Rope and switch it into something that has maybe 1 retreat or has a float stone on it. Well, I can immediately retreat back out and just re-attack. So I do like that a lot. And then we play a Startling Megaphone just because, so many decks are playing tool cards right now, especially these Garbodor decks like Darkrai, Giratina, Garbodor, which kind of popped up at the Origins Game Fair in Columbus. And then, it had an outing at Nationals, but by then I guess the secret was kind of out and it didn't do so hot, at least not overall compared to something like Night March. But Megaphone is great against things like Garbodor. It's great against things in general, any kind of deck that uses tools like Fighting Fury Belt, Floatstone, etc. Really disruptive and makes our math a little bit easier to knock off those Fury Belts. And then lastly, we've got Super Odd. And yeah, keep in mind the one in the picture isn't legal. That one's from like Neo from like years ago. I couldn't find my other Super Odds, but just keep that in mind. But it is the newer Super Odd. So basically it lets you shuffle any combination of basic energy and Pokemon, so 3 total back in the deck. This is good because I can put fire energies back in the deck. I can get Pokemon back in the deck that were maybe prized, like Shaymin or Volcanion. Originally this card was actually going to be a Karen in here, but unfortunately it was announced a few hours ago that Karen, more than likely, it looks like is not going to be making the cut for Steam Siege. So unfortunately, that does mean that we're going to have to replace it. And in this case, Super Odd is a great fit. The deck really doesn't lose anything. If anything, it's probably a bit more consistent with Super Odd. But I would have liked to see Karen in here just as a great, Night March counter or, another, Vestal counter, any kind of deck that relies on all these Pokemon. So it is a shame we won't be getting it, but that's okay. We should get it in the coming months. So, and then the last thing we have in here are 11 fire energy. So, normally this is like overkill in most decks, except for maybe Darkrai Giratina, where you might play like 13 or 14 energy. But 11 fire is going to let us do a few things. First of all, it's going to let us draw into them and get those attachments practically every turn. So we're not going to whiff on energy. Second of all, it has some synergy with Scorched Earth, so I can add, extra draw power throughout the game. And it just works really nicely with the deck. That assurance that you're never going to whiff the fire energy. You're going to have plenty to work with, so I can afford to discard them and use them with Blacksmith. I think it's a great feeling to have when, you can kind of burn through the deck and not have to worry so much about, say like a Trevenant deck that plays 7 or 8 energy, having to worry about whether or not your energies are gone for the game. So, a little less reliance on Super Odd, but it's still great to have. So, yeah, my rambling aside for this deck, I do like it. It's very consistent, very fast. It reminds me in a lot of ways like the Entei deck that kind of popped up around City Championships a few months ago. So Entei Charizard, very similar to that. It uses that Blacksmith engine. It's very fast, aggressive. But in a lot of ways, I think this deck is better because there's no cap on damage. I mean, you can use 4 steam up abilities and do a whopping like 250 damage in one turn. So, I mean, extremely, extremely powerful. I don't think I'd really change a card in this deck. I think it's awesome already. But that's just my opinion. I could be wrong. I'm sure I'm biased against my own lists. So, like I said, make changes to your suiting. That's what it's here for. It's really there as just a reference. But if you liked it, be sure to like our video, comment, subscribe. If you think I missed something, be sure to tell me, or if you think a better card would be good in here. But as I said, it's good for, this deck is going to be legal for the World Championships in a few weeks. So be sure to check it out. Be sure to watch Pokemon stream, show some support. And yeah, just closing this video, check out our website, topdecknation.com, like us on Facebook at topdecknation. But I'll go ahead and stop my rambling now. So this has been Zach with Top Deck Nation, and I will catch you guys in the next video.